If you were to show the Porsche marketing department a mandarin, they would probably want to write a memo to Mother Nature and say, nice work, not enough segments. The thing is that Porsche can really cut, slice and dice a product. The Porsche 911 currently has 34 variants available in Australian showrooms, but I haven't checked that for about an hour, so it could be more than that now. This is the latest, the GTS, which comes in somewhere between the Carrera and the Turbo, making it like a Super Carrera or a not quite Turbo. Confusingly though, it is now a Turbo, because all new 911s are, which makes the purists slightly unhappy and makes the average punter completely thrilled because they're fantastic and fast. But has something been lost, or is this as great as the last GTS, which was possibly one of the greatest cars ever? In true Porsche style, you can have your GTS badge on not just one 911 variant, but 5. A rear-wheel drive coupe or cabriolet, an all-wheel drive Carrera 4 in coupe or cabriolet, or a Targa version, which has a kind of sexy kind of convertible roof and is about as pointless as a bald man going for a haircut. And you can have each of those 5 options with either a truly magical manual gearbox or the annoyingly brilliant PDK shifty paddle transmission, which means there are actually 10 GTS versions of what Porsche likes to call the most sporting and emotional entry in the 911 model line. The main differences between the GTS and the Carrera S that sits just beneath it in the bottomless ocean of 911 derivatives is that regardless of whether you choose the all-wheel or rear-wheel driven versions, you get the wide body, which makes it look fat with a capital P-H-A-T. It's fair to say this is the best looking and most curvaceous Porsche that big money can buy. You also get cleverer, louder twin turbos for your effervescent 3-litre flat-6 engine, which boosts the GTS's power to 331 kilowatts, which is up 15 kilowatts, and 550 newton meters of torque. That, in turn, sees your 0 to 100 km/h time drop to an almost supercar-like 3.6 seconds, while your top speed tops out at 312 km/h. So, what are the things that are great about it? Where do you start with everything? The seating position, the steering wheel, the way it feels in your hands, the brakes, the throttle, the sound, not quite as good as it used to be, but still amazing. Perfection. Perfection and Porsche, the two are kind of indivisible. It's almost annoying because every time you go to test one of these cars, you know you're going to love it. But occasionally, recently, sometimes, you don't love it quite as much as you used to. Over the past few years, Porsches have become a bit posher, less lawless and more luxury. The move away from the traditional and dearly beloved naturally aspirated, metallically mellifluous engine to turbocharged ones, with this, the latest 991 iteration of the 911, toned down the volume. Before that, Porsche really peed off the purists by doing away with hydraulic steering in favour of an electronic facsimile of it, just to save a few drops of fuel. Annoyingly, the 911 still has the best steering of any car on the planet. The only way you can better it is to buy an older 911, but what man of means would do that? A Porsche buyer wants a new car, and if they've never driven an old one, they're certainly not going to be disappointed with this one. There's a sense of rightness about it. Everything just feels instantly good. Every sensation, the tactility of this feeling you get through the road, no one else does it quite as well. The only people who've ever done it better than this car are Porsche, who used to do it better. But if lap times or point-to-point figures are your thing, the new one's obviously better. But, I don't know, for me, some of the magic is gone. Not all of it, because it's still pretty bloody good, but some of the magic is gone. Mind you, every extra minute I spend in the car, the more I think I'm just being a total dick, because this kind of greatness is hard to argue with. And if this is the first 911 you've ever driven, you Personally, when this latest but not greatest version of the 911 was launched, the first of the turbo era, I was a bit disappointed, a little underwhelmed, an opinion that was not inspired by how it drove, because it was undoubtedly faster and better than the old car, but just by how it felt. It was no longer the car of my tortured dreams, and a large part of that was the sound. Turbo cars just can't sound as good as naturally aspirated ones. But then I drove this GTS, which, thanks to its unique turbochargers, has a different, more strident note, which brings back some of the savagery that went missing. You also get a honed and lowered chassis that feels a tiny bit tighter than the Carrera models, and bigger brakes. So it goes, sounds, turns in and stops slightly better than what is already an astonishing car. This is, in essence, after you've waded through the list of variants you could have, the 911 you're looking for. And by that we mean the cheapest rear-wheel drive coupe version of the GTS, because all the others are about showing off more than having fun. So, the GTS may seem a little unnecessary. Indeed, in any other car company entirely would be unnecessary. How many times can you slice a mandarin? Infinitely, if you ask Porsche. But there is something special about it. There is something better than a Carrera. There is something more practical than a turbo about the GTS. There is something that I deeply love about this car, and I just want one.